Hello, everyone. My name is Gitika Gorthy, and today I am very honored to be interviewing a very special space champion, Mr. Bugh. Mr. Bugh is currently the CEO at Vasant Corporation. He has worked at Lockheed Martin for 33 years earlier. However, he chose to go a different direction due to his passion and belief in his research. The information presented on the Vasant Corporation website originated from some research Mr. Bugh did years ago on electrical power producing devices and devices with claimed gravity reduction side effects. He ended up with a theory that connects gravity and electromagnetism in a way that allows the engineering of anti gravity. His division of Lockheed Martin was not interested at the time. They wanted to make planes the old fashioned way, and the Skunk Works division wanted his proposal reduced to a one page sheet summary. And then they rejected it for how it was written. The DoD said if Lockheed Martin wasn't interested, then they weren't either. However, Mr. Bugh did not take this as a sign of demotivation and now is successfully providing consulting services and makes presentations to interested groups within the US and US allied countries. His success story, determination, perseverance, and space passion is truly remarkable, and I can't wait to learn more about it. Welcome, Mr. Bugh. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule to conduct this interview.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for hosting me.
Yeah. So before we get into understanding more of your space journey and how you got into the industry, first I'd like to know more about your typical day. What do you currently do and how does it run?
These days, my workload is not too much. I actually spend more time more recently trying to get a new house built because the house my two teenagers and my wife and I are in is very small. Other than that, um, I typically spend a few hours a day updating the Vasant Corporation website and trying to contact or get people interested in what I call spin wave technology. It describes that more at the website. Um, I find people that are kind of informally interested, uh, sometimes highly interested, but uh, not many people with an official government endorsed uh, funding or anything like that for my research. So I keep trying to find people that are.
Yeah, it's all about the perseverance and keep pushing at the idea. Actually, I was reading a book. I was talking to the other space champion who wrote a book on Hubble, and he was talking about how his idea of LOR was not first, like when sending the first man to the moon, was not accepted at first very easily, and he had to go through like a long journey of convincing all the officials and showing that his idea works and it's better than everyone else's. And I think his story shows that perseverance is key in any type of research. And I'm so glad you're able to, pursue and do what you're interested in and you're, working towards it and not giving up.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I know I gave a brief introduction on your research on electrical power producing devices, but I would love to hear if you could explain it a little bit more in depth. And how are you so passionate about this specific work?
Well, I the research started maybe excuse me around 1993 or 1994. I had a lot of spare time on my hands, and the internet back then was still fairly new, a lot more so than today. And there would be various websites and chat groups, places like that, where I could find out information about these so-called free energy devices that people would make these electromagnetic devices that apparently there's no uh, source of power that anyone could identify, and yet supposedly they would output power that you could use to power a boat in one case or power radios and light bulbs, things like that. So I spent pretty much most all of my spare time after work studying various devices like that. And for years, I just kept going at it and going at it, trying to figure out the different things they had in common, how they could work, and all of that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, that's really cool. And, before we get into understanding really how your interest in space arrived, which I'm really curious on, first, I'd like to know a little bit more about, your research. So, was it a big decision for you or like a tough decision to, stop working at Lockheed Martin or retire from Lockheed Martin and, become the CEO at Vasant Corporation? Was it like a big change or a big step for you?
It was not really a big step. Years before I left Lockheed, they had already given me permission to start my own corporation. I had to go through management and go through the Lockheed legal department and verify with them that what I was doing didn't really have anything in common with my work at Lockheed. And after all the different departments were happy at Lockheed, they said, okay, go ahead. And so, um, I mean, I was doing the research even before I started Vasant Corporation. And the corporation wasn't actually originally intended to be associated with the research, but I kind of repurposed it and used the corporate name to publish my research papers. And still, Lockheed didn't really have much problem with it. The only problem I had turned out to be from the Department of Defense. And they told me they did not want foreign nationals to have a way to communicate with me, not because of my research, but because they didn't want them to be asking me questions about classified things I worked on at Lockheed. So for several years, I kind of shut down the website and hardly had anything going for all of my research. So eventually, though, the DoD, I can't remember how the timeline went, but there was a period of time where they were going to go ahead and take my clearance away. And right up to the date when we were going to have the big official hearing about it, they suddenly dropped the whole thing. And the guy who like plays the part of the prosecutor for the Department of Defense said he, someone higher than him made the decision to suddenly just drop the whole thing. And he said he'd never seen anything like that, and it is very unusual for him. So, but I was very happy about it. And sometime after that, I went ahead and started up the website again. And one thing I pointed out to the DoD was that, well, there's tons of VIPs at Lockheed Martin, people with higher clearances or more compartmented projects they're working on than myself. And yet still they were telling everything about themselves and how to contact themselves on LinkedIn. So it didn't make any sense to be coming after me when all these other people were as much of it in violation of allowing themselves to be contacted as I was. So I don't know if that had anything to do with them suddenly dropping the whole thing or not. But anyway, after all that, I started the website up again.
Yeah, yeah, and
I got off on a tangent. I'm sorry. I'm not
oh,
sure what I was supposed to answer originally.
yeah, no, no, I really, appreciate you sharing that story with us and like the process it took because I feel, especially with like a lot of space companies, people don't understand the procedures that are in there, or what if they want to kind of divert and do something else. I really appreciate you telling the story. And my original question was, was it a tough decision? And you did answer that by saying it was not really a tough decision because you have the clearance to kind of do both, and it was more of like a
Yeah.
smooth transition for you. And because you're really passionate about the work, it wasn't really a hard decision, I'm sure, for you to dedicate yourself to furthering the Sant Corporation. So definitely answered the question. And so my next question for you is, what is the biggest lesson you've learned during the process of your research, or maybe even during, starting the Sant Corporation?
I would say biggest lesson was just to be patient and not expect results overnight. Um, have perseverance, just keep going, keep your goal in mind. And I had to keep my goals in mind and just keep working towards them.
Yeah, I think that is beautifully said. Whether it be in like a high school student, a college student, or maybe even just, a little kid trying to, be something in sports or athletics, maybe. I think it's always important to just not give up halfway, but also don't expect immediate results. Like, oh, I practiced for 5 hours today, so tomorrow I better be able to score like, five baskets to, so like immediate results are obviously nice to have, but it shouldn't be expected of, and we should have that continuous work. So I definitely appreciate you telling us that, especially because you've been through it. And so, did you always imagine yourself in the position you are in today, or did you have some twists and turns along your journey? Like, how did you get into space? Did you know you wanted a space career? And maybe even did you know you're going to start your own company?
I had not thought that one day I would start my own company until it just kind of happened. Um, I'm glad I did. Um, there was times when I thought about shutting it down, and over the years, I'm glad now that I did not do that. Um, I guess the biggest twists and turns would just be that in just that those periods where I wasn't sure I wanted to keep it going or not, but I ended up just keep pursuing what I'm pursuing. Um, Forgot the other part of your question.
Yeah, so the first part of my question was like, how did you get into space? I mean, as a young kid, was there an influential book, a person? I mean, what motivated you and drives you to end up working at Lockheed Martin and the space industry?
I've always had an interest in science and electronics since I was very young. Um, in high school, I attended a high school that recently opened, so everything was kind of new. And at this new school, they had an electronics class, and the teacher had ordered a oscilloscope kit for himself. And he said, "Hey, you can put this together as your class project. You can put the oscilloscope together for me." And I love doing that. So I learned a lot. And then we built radios and things like that in electronics class also. So that was nice things to do to kind of prepare me for doing more of the same things as I got older. And my interest in space and anti-gravity really originated out of my study of these so-called free energy devices because several different inventors all claimed that their device not only worked, but the more power that they drew from their device, the more it had gravity modification effects. And so that was fascinating to me. And so I spent a lot of time over the years studying that link between how their device would really work and how it would be able to have gravity modification effects.
Yeah, every little kid or every student really has that mentor or teacher, I feel like, who always kind of ignites a little passion in them or makes them aware. I think that's what's the beauty of, having these amazing teachers. The reason I started Ignited Thinkers, like the organization, was because I didn't know if every person out there had a teacher that I had, like Mr. Anderson, who got me into space. Not everyone has that teacher, and luckily you did. And so I wanted Ignited Thinkers to be that mentor or that teacher for other students around the world. And so I definitely understand how a teacher like, really, gave you that spark. I know teachers are great. They really guide us into the right direction and provide us with so many exposures. And I'm so glad that you're able to find that passion and, really stick with it. It's really awesome. And so,
I, I'm
yeah,
sorry.
yeah, no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just also wanted to mention there was a few other people also that kind of were mentoring me along the way through the years. One is a friend named Chan. He graduated from the University of Texas in Austin, and he was kind enough to let me have some of his physics books from classes he had taken. So that was helpful in me studying things.
Yeah, I think having that motivation, like friends, family, that support and that network system next to you, whether it be your family or, just friends, like I was mentioning earlier, always that support system kind of pushes us to go forward. Just gives us a sense of confidence, I feel like. I mean, as a high school student, I know that I wouldn't be able to do as much as I am now without, like, my parents or the network that I've built, who always continuously push me to, achieve my dreams and support me in the process. So, definitely I agree with the concept of having and building that system of networks.
Yeah, and I'll be in trouble if I don't also say, for the past 19 years, has mainly been my wife who keeps encouraging me. She understands my research and understands my passion for it. So I really appreciate her being there for me and encouraging me also.
Yeah, yeah, those are some really sweet words. I'm so glad you have such an amazing companion always next to you who understands your work, supports your work, and furthers it. It's really nice to have that, type of relationship with someone else. And yeah, and so I'm also very curious. You obviously were a student at a point of time before working at Lockheed Martin. And so there was a point of time where you were probably exploring what type of job you wanted to do, whether it be an engineer or something different. So was there an internship, a volunteer role, or maybe like a research experience that really helped you further your career?
Um, I can't think of anything in particular like that. I guess ever since I was very young, I was wanting to go ahead and get into science and electronics. Um, I would have done it earlier and just right out of high school gone to University of Texas in Austin, but I didn't have a job that paid enough, and I ended up joining the Air Force. So
Oh,
that
mhm.
was a good experience to go through for 4 years. Plus, then the Air Force gave me the GI Bill benefits, so that helped me pay for college later. And then I worked part time, and so both that together helped me go ahead and get through college after the Air Force. So
Yeah, that might have been a really great experience. I know, like, the military is me. I've interviewed a bunch of professionals who've actually been a part of the Air Force or the Naval Academy, and so there's so many cool experiences, and you get a free education while being able to pursue the track you want. So definitely, that's a career track that a lot of people I've seen take that for their education. So yeah, it's
yeah.
it's nice to hear that you also were doing that. And so I'm curious. Also, I'm sorry, were you about to say something?
Oh, just add one more thing I would add, and that was my dad had retired from the Air Force. He was an OSI uh, officer, and two of my brothers had been in the Air Force, and so it was kind of a natural thing, I guess, for me to decide to go ahead and get in the Air Force also. So that's all.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. That path and, seeing someone I know, like, ever since I was a little kid, my parents would always be like, find someone who's your role model and, look up to what they did, their track, whether it be a family member or like a public figure, an influencer, just, have someone that you look up to because always looking at someone who already's been through the journey helps you get, first of all, inspired, motivated, but provides you a path of track where you don't feel lost. So definitely either following your parents or following someone else is always nice to have in your space journey.
Uh,
Yeah. So my question I was about to ask you was, were there obstacles in I mean, everyone I've asked this question to is like, it was totally not a smooth ride for anyone. So I'm sure you've had obstacles. So what were the obstacles, if you did have any, to pursue your passion? And if you did have them, how did you overcome them? Because I know the number one thing is not to stop at a failure, but to grow from and learn from it. So could you please share like a story to us about it, an obstacle and how you overcame it?
Um, I guess the biggest obstacle for me was the period of time where the Department of Defense was giving me a hard time about having the Vasant Corporation. And it cost me a lot of money actually because I had to hire a lawyer to fight them, trying to take my security clearance away. So that period of time was kind of rough, and I was glad when it was over. Um, it was mainly just a process of perseverance, just keep trying to get where I wanted to be, despite having to deal with that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's always diversions or, certain financial situations. A part of my United Thinkers mission is to spread space to all, regardless of their economic status. That's part of the statement. And I, truly, when I work with I feel like financial situations, whether it be you're born with it because of your family or in the future, I think it's always like what I've learned is if you have passion, you can always push through. I mean, I've worked with about over the pandemic, over about like 200 kids at Title I schools. So it's like low poverty areas at my in Virginia. And when I was talking with them, I mean, I have to say every single one was so passionate about space because they signed up for the webinar and they were so excited and so motivated to provide and contribute to the space industry in the future. And so I know, like, kind of relate on a little bit of a tangent to what you were saying is, whatever troubles you have, as long as you have passion for it, you're going to find a way to achieve it. And I am glad that you were able to overcome your obstacle and push through. And it was really nice hearing your space journey and your space story. But now I'm also very curious on, and I want to know more about what excites you about the space industry. So first, I'd like to ask you, how do you keep your skills current in the space industry? I mean, every day I feel like I go on Twitter or get a newsletter. I mean, there's so many discoveries happening every day. How do you keep up with everything with all the work you're conducting?
I I actually hardly do. I don't really keep up with it all. There's just so much, so many people launching satellites these days,
Yeah.
so many planned trips for civilians into space now, and so many people visiting Mars now. So I don't keep up with it well enough. Um, I guess more of my attention also is in the areas I guess that most people would call kind of fringe science that most people don't even accept. My contention is there's a small group of people out there that already have very advanced technology that they're not wanting to share, and they're making space exploration headways, I should say, much more than the general public realizes. And I hope someday that changes, that more of that will come out in the public. But I guess right now that's where I put a lot more of my attention than what the typical kind of space things that people hear about in the day-to-day news.
Yeah, I know definitely from what you were saying about a collaborative environment. Sadly to say, the reason a lot of like, NASA, for example, really started was because of political purposes and reasons. And so there's still this like tension almost between like political power related to space. And so being able to come out of that and create a more collaborative environment where everyone can work together and grow as a humanity, which is something that a lot of people are advocating for now, like you're mentioning, it's going to be a great progress for humanity as all. Personally for me, I'm hoping that we can send humans to Mars collaboratively, working with various, agencies, because it's going to require a lot of money, and just taking that from one organization is difficult. But rather, if we could combine forces, I think we could achieve so much more, and it would be a successful, very successful trip. So definitely agree on the collaborative part of what you were saying.
That would be much better than excessive competition. Yeah.
100% agreed. Obviously, healthy competition is always good, but I mean, it's, in this day and age, I think that we would work a lot better collaboratively because we're already so advanced, and we have a long way to go. And combining different strengths and weaknesses is definitely the key to anything and to everything. So, yeah. And so now, now that I understand your focus of what focus your attention on, what excites you about the space industry from like what you read or your work that you're doing? What excites you and what makes you nervous? Something that holds you back.
I guess the thing that excites me the most more recently is I believe it was Senator Rubio included some verbiage in some of the legislation passed recently that the Pentagon has less than 180 days now to go public with everything they know about UFOs.
Oh,
So
I didn't hear
that
about that.
excites me, and I keep waiting for that countdown to the last day because, in my opinion, it's pretty much mostly all our own military that are the ones who build all of these UFOs that people are seeing. So for them to come clean and go public about that, is something that I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, yeah, me too. I actually didn't know about this. Now I have to like immediately right after this interview search this up because I had no idea. UFOs are like ever since I was a little kid, whether it be reading a sci-fi book, watching a movie, or sometimes hearing about it in the news. I think it's crazy cool. And so, I've always been someone who's a believer in aliens or some life outside. So UFOs it definitely excites me. I definitely have to keep up with that news. And so I'm curious, what makes you nervous about the space industry?
Um, that people like violence too much around the whole planet. So, I mean, if we actually go public with technology that would help make the whole world a better place, there's also people that would want to weaponize it and use it to engage in massive amounts of violence against each other. So that that makes me nervous. And then climate change makes me nervous. I think we've been using oil for our primary energy source around the world too long, and the effects of it are going to eventually catch up to us.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely agree with the climate change. I know taking action to here on Earth is really important. And one of the controversial questions I always ask is, what's your opinion on the space budget? Do you think it's too large? And most of the space professionals I've talked to have always said it is not enough because space technology is, heavily used in, first of all, understanding our planet. I mean, we can't see physically the changes that are happening on Earth over time, but satellites can. We can collect that data and information. And so space technology advances us to find solutions and provides that innovative and critical thinking area. So, what is your thoughts? Like after your statement about climate change, I'm curious. What do you think that the space budget is too large and we should focus more on our planet instead of space? What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are what a lot of people would probably consider conspiracy theories. So
Yeah.
I think the space program that the general public sees is one thing, and then what secret military and defense company organizations are doing is something completely different. And uh, they're made. My opinion is they've made a lot more progress in space exploration than people realize. Um, I even wonder if they've already found alternate planets for us to colonize, and they don't want to tell everyone. Maybe they only want some people to colonize them or something like that. I don't know. There's so many things, so many unknowns, but um, I'm fairly confident we do have technology that exceeds what most space companies are involved with. Um, like SpaceX, for example, all those kind of companies. Um, for example, where SpaceX is now, McGregor, Texas, that land used to be owned by the Department of the Navy. And my parents used to own an 84-acre ranch out near there. And they've seen, long before there was ever a SpaceX out there, back when it was owned by the Navy, they've seen UFOs go over and land there. They've seen glowing orbs come out of the front of the UFO and fly around like anti-gravity drones.
Wow.
And this is years before there was ever a SpaceX. And since it's landing at land owned by the Department of the Navy, I'm assuming, well, that means our Navy's got this stuff. So
Wow.
uh,
Wow. I had no
it keeps a
idea.
lot, I'm sorry, it keeps a lot of people employed doing conventional space exploration and equipment development and all of that. But if you took that same budget and put it towards this technology that a much smaller portion of us are hoarding for themselves, it would do a lot more good. That's my opinion.
Yes, I definitely agree with that. And, I'm really shocked to hear about the views your parents saw. I think it's really cool how there's so much out there. There's still a lot of unknowns. We just have to keep our eyes open for what's going to come and what's happening. I definitely agree with also what you're saying about the negative effects of violence. A lot of scientific advancements we've had in the past, have led to world wars, have led to, you know, misuse of a lot of scientific achievements that scientists have made for, wrong purposes. So definitely, I
Yeah.
agree that we take, there are good people and then there are people who misuse the technology we have. And I think it's just always good to remember to create that boundary line and try our best to make sure people don't misuse what we have. I mean, for example, like coding, programming, cybersecurity. I mean, the concept of computers is amazing, but a lot of people have, taken that into a bad way and started hacking. And so I definitely can see how people can take the good and the bad out of things. It's always important to just stress the good, of course. So
Yeah.
yeah, definitely it's a valid concern for a future. So thank you for sharing that as well. And so now that we had an understanding of your space journey, which obviously, encompasses so much perseverance from your side, and also learned more about what excites you about space and what keeps you moving and what keeps you motivated, my last question for you to, wrap up the interview is what advice do you have for young people regarding their pursuit of a passion in the STEM field, space industry, or really any career they want? Something that you wish you knew when you were maybe a high school or college student yourself.
I would say learn as much as you can now and do a lot of projects, you know, find projects that you enjoy and uh, learn as much as you can from actually doing the things. Find companies that will mentor you. Um, Try to spend less time uh, on the computer playing games. I would say a lot of young people are spending hours and hours on computer gaming and things like that. Just my personal opinion. In the long run, society as a whole would be better off if we were spending that time learning things uh, to make the world a better place, um, to increase uh, productivity of companies and things like that.
Yeah. I think that is amazing advice, especially for young students. I mean, we've had an amazing opportunity to have knowledge in our fingertips with the inventions of like smartphones and smart watches, and we've been given everything that past societies didn't really have, and also that comes with the access to a lot of games and movies and distractions and entertainment. But it's we have both the good and the bad, and I think being able to use it is the good of it is really important. And so I thank you for your advice for telling us about the importance of internships, volunteering, continuously learning. It's okay to take breaks, but don't make that consume most of your day. Find a passion and go with it and stick with it. And like Mr. Bu, find something that you'll stick with and persevere through. Personally, I love space medicine. And after hearing your story, I know that regardless of whatever troubles I have, if I believe in something, I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to work with it and I'm going to take it forward. So I want to thank you so much, Mr. Bu, for taking some time to conduct this Space Champion interview. It was truly an honor talking with you.
Thank you too. I've enjoyed it.